What if the greatest screams ever filmed were buried beneath decades of dust and forgotten VHS shelves? This is not your typical horror countdown. These are the cursed children of horror's past, resurrected on YouTube and Tubi for free. Forgotten classics that still have the power to terrify. You just have to know where to look. Are you sure you're ready to see where real horror began? Careful. Some of these might just rewrite your movie DNA. 10. The Screaming Skull, 1958. Beneath the polite starched surface of 1950s suburbia lies a psychological ghost story that refuses to stay buried. The plot follows a man who brings his new bride to his palatial estate only for her to be tormented by the literal skull of his deceased former wife. It was largely dismissed as trashy schlock upon release, but modern fans have returned to it with a new appreciation for its thick, claustrophobic atmosphere. The film is a masterclass in using sound as a weapon. Every rolling thunder and every high-pitched wail is designed to shred the protagonist's nerves, and yours. Director Alex Nichol used stark, high-contrast cinematography to make the garden and the mansion feel like a trap. Interestingly, the film originally opened with a gimmick. A free burial was promised to anyone who died of fright during the screening. It's that kind of carnival energy that makes The Screaming Skull more than just a movie. It's an artifact of an era when horror was an interactive experience. The slow burn tension builds to a finale that, while low budget, captures a raw primal fear of the unknown. 9. Dementia 13, 1963. Before he gave the world The Godfather, a young Francis Ford Coppola directed this shadow-drenched story of obsession and blood-soaked legacy. Shot on a shoestring budget in a gloomy Irish castle, the film possesses a layer of authenticity and gothic gravitas that most big-budget studio films lack. It is essentially a slasher film before the genre even had a name, filled with brutal shocks and a documentary-style realism. Coppola was reportedly told to make a cheap Psycho knockoff, but he ended up creating something far more atmospheric. The sequence in the lake is legendary for its haunting beauty and sudden violence. Every creaking door in the Halloran Castle feels like a warning, and the pacing is relentless, turning a family dispute over an inheritance into a full-throttle survival chamber. The use of black and white film here isn't just a budget choice, it's a stylistic one that turns every shadow into a potential killer. It's a fascinating look at a master director finding his voice through blood and shadows. Number 8. The Vampire Bat, 1933/40's favorite. This isn't your typical vampire tale. It's a sophisticated blend of medical body horror and small-town hysteria that feels like a precursor to the atomic dread of later years. Starring the iconic Fay Wray and Lionel Atwill, the film weaponizes the mad scientist trope to explore how easily a community can fall into paranoia and mass conformity. The production design utilized leftover sets from Universal's Frankenstein, giving it a high production value that belies its independent roots. The film excels at depicting the mob mentality, how quickly neighbors turn on each other when faced with a threat they don't understand. The scenes in the laboratory are filled with buzzing electrical equipment and bubbling vats, creating a sense of scientific dread. It asks a terrifying question that still resonates in the age of misinformation. Is the real monster the one with fangs, or the one with the scalpel who convinces you the fangs are real? Number 7. Carnival of Souls, 1962. A dream trapped in celluloid, Carnival of Souls is a low-budget ghost story that plays out like a slow-motion existential crisis. After surviving a traumatic car crash, Mary Henry moves to a new city to become a church organist, only to find herself haunted by a pale, silent figure known only as the Man. This figure doesn't jump out at her. He simply is there, in the reflection of a window or across a deserted street. Director Herc Harvey, who usually made industrial films, shot this for almost nothing, using real locations like the abandoned Salt Air Pavilion in Utah. The result is a film that feels strangely indie and ahead of its time. The organ score, played by Gene Moore, is perhaps the most important character. It seeps into your bones, creating a haunting, poetic edge. There's a specific scene where Mary becomes invisible to the world around her, unable to be seen or heard by anyone. It's a chilling depiction of social alienation and existential dread that inspired everyone from David Lynch to George Romero. Number 6. The Brain That Would Not Die, 1962. Science and madness collide in this gloriously deranged artifact of the early 60s. When a brilliant but unethical surgeon decapitates his fiancée in a car accident, he refuses to let her go, keeping her head alive in a laboratory while he hunts for a perfect body to attach it to. The decapitated head, played with incredible intensity by Virginia Leaf, becomes the film's cynical soul. The film is a masterclass in low-budget body horror. The lab is a claustrophobic space filled with the sounds of humming machinery and the woman's telepathic whispers. She isn't just a victim, she becomes a vengeful force, communicating with a mutated monster locked in a nearby closet. The makeup effects on the thing in the closet are surprisingly effective for the time, leaning into a grotesque, fleshy aesthetic. It explores the dark side of the medical ego, the idea that science should do something just because it can. The final act is a gore-soaked, for 1962, descent into chaos that proves some things are better left dead. Number 5. House on Haunted Hill, 1959. Vincent Price stars as Frederick Lauren, a billionaire who invites 5 strangers to a notoriously haunted house, offering them $10,000 if they can survive the night. But this isn't a friendly gathering, it's a psychological game of cat and mouse. The house itself is a marvel of production, a mix of Gothic architecture and mid-century modernism that feels both ancient and futuristic. Director William Castle was the king of gimmicks, originally installing Emerco, a skeleton that flew over the audience's heads in theaters. Even without the skeleton, the film works because of Price's velvet voice performance. He's charming, witty, and absolutely terrifying. The film uses every trick in the book: vats of acid, falling chandeliers, and ghosts that glide through the air. But the real horror is the betrayal between the characters. Everyone has a motive, and no one is safe. It's a high watermark for a mid-century spectacle that still makes jaws drop because it understands that the scariest part of a haunted house is the people you're trapped inside with. Number 4. The Killer Shrews, 1959. If you think giant shrews sound ridiculous, you haven't experienced the relentless pacing of this cult classic. Set on a remote island during a hurricane, a group of people is besieged by dog-sized predators created by a failed genetic experiment intended to solve world hunger. The irony's thick. The cure for hunger became a creature that can never stop eating. While the practical effects are famously lo-fi, dogs and masks and rugs, the film manages to create a genuine sense of mounting doom. The sound of the shrews gnawing through the walls of the compound is a constant, grating reminder of their persistence. The characters are forced to use their wits, leading to a climax involving overturned bathtubs that is both absurd and surprisingly tense. It's a perfect example of bottle movie horror, where the limited budget forces the director to focus on character conflict and survival instincts. It's atomic dread with whiskers, and it still draws blood. Number 3. Invisible Ghost, 1941. Bela Lugosi delivers a powerhouse performance that is as heartbreakingly human as it is terrifying. He plays Charles Kessler, a kind man who loses his mind whenever he glimpses his dead wife, who is actually alive but hiding in the garden after a brain-damaging accident. In his trance, he becomes a murderous sleepwalker, killing anyone he encounters. The film turns horror into a tragic fable. Lugosi's face, captured in tight close-ups, conveys a world of grief. The cinematography uses forced perspective and deep shadows to make the Kessler mansion feel like a living tomb. There's a specific ritualistic feel to the murders, accompanied by a somber, haunting score. It's a forgotten gem from Monogram Pictures that proves Lugosi was capable of much more than just Dr. Dracula. It explores the idea that our subconscious mind can hold monsters that we aren't even aware of, making the invisible ghost the guilt and trauma we carry with us. Number 2. Night of the Living Dead, 1968. George Romero's masterpiece didn't just launch a subgenre, it set the gold standard for doomsday spectacle. Filmed in grainy black and white on a shoestring budget, the story of 7 people trapped in a farmhouse by flesh-eating ghouls felt dangerously real. There are no magic cures or military heroes here, only the raw, apocalyptic power of a world that has stopped making sense. The film broke all the rules. It featured a black protagonist, Ben, Dwayne Jones, who was the most capable and logical person in the room, a revolutionary choice for 1968. The ghouls weren't voodoo slaves, they were your neighbors, your friends, and even your children. The sound design is minimal, letting the moans of the dead and the frantic radio reports fill the silence. The tension within the house is as deadly as the threat outside, as the characters crumble under pressure. Its ending is a philosophical slap in the face, a bleak reflection of the civil unrest and violence of the late 60s. It remains the most important horror film ever made, proving that the genre can be a powerful mirror for society's deepest fears. The Devil Rides Out, 1968. When Hammer Films unleashed The Devil Rides Out, they proved that horror could be lush, literate, and loaded with soul. Christopher Lee stars as the Duc de Richelieu, a heroic scholar of the dark arts who must save a young friend from a satanic cult led by the chilling Mokata. This is a rare film where the good guys are just as knowledgeable about the occult as the villains. The film elevates the genre with its intellectual ambition. The rituals are performed with bone-chilling conviction based on actual occult lore. The sequence where the characters stay inside a protective salt circle while being besieged by the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and the goat of Mendez is one of the most tense moments in cinema history. Director Terence Fisher uses vibrant colors, deep reds and ominous purples to create a world that feels both beautiful and cursed. It's a masterclass in atmospheric dread that doesn't rely on gore, but on the sheer weight of its spiritual stakes. It is a hidden masterpiece that deserves worship, a reminder that in the battle between light and dark, the stakes are nothing less than the human soul. Forgotten no longer, these horror classics live again through digital resurrection. From radioactive mutations to demonic rituals, each of these films offers a unique scream that is still incredible today. You can stream them all right now for free on Tubi or YouTube. If you dare to enter their world tonight, share this list with fellow horror believers. Which classic did we miss? And what would your number 1 pick be? Drop your favorites in the comments, hit subscribe for more retro revelations, and remember, in the dark of the cinema, we are never truly alone.